Oh my gosh, y'all. I don't know that I care how cringy this is, but like, look at my eyes. I just spent the last 15 minutes crying at how much like there is grief and joy all at the same time when you become a Christian. And I talked about this so much last year when I first got saved, but now I'm closer to a year of being saved than not being saved. And I was just like reflecting on how grateful I am at how my social media pages have grown since I first started content creation and influencing, and like how God made my entire personality and put all these talents into me to use it for my platforms. And at the end of the day, none of that's gonna matter anyway. Like the knitting orders, the collaborations, like they're all great gifts to experience here on earth. But in the grand scheme of things, there are a lot of lost souls out here, and I was one of them last year. And to think like I had been running away from the Lord for almost 30 years. Somebody who grew up in church most of their life and thought they knew Jesus, and turns out I didn't for most of my life. And now I've come to know him for myself. Like, I can't imagine the misery and turmoil so many other people feel, like how I felt, because my like heart and my soul were yearning for something greater than myself. And I thought I had God and Jesus all figured out, and I just needed to write a bunch of affirmations on the mirror and meditate daily and make sure I pour into myself. But all of that, like, I don't know. This is probably just rambling at this point, but I say all that to say I am so grief stricken and overjoyed, like all the time. And I guess tonight it just hit me a little harder. And I know I'm not alone, so I'm sharing this so that whoever else feels this, dear brother and sister in Christ, you're not alone either. Put a finger down if you were raised in church and you thought you knew what it meant to be a good Christian, and so you decided to get baptized when you were like 12 years old, and then you learned what it really meant to be baptized, so then you got baptized again at 17 because you knew what it meant to go into the liquid grave and to come back up born again. But then you realized last year that you didn't know Jesus at all because you did not admit that you tried to do your entire life without him, and you didn't trust him with everything, and you couldn't even discern your voice from his voice, from the devil's voice. And then one day the Lord just allowed your whole life to turn completely upside down, all the tables flipped over, and then you had no choice but to give your life over to Christ because you finally realized he was running after you this entire time, and you stopped running because you got tired because you're not strong enough without the Lord. This is my testimony. I'm finally in a place physically and mentally and emotionally where I have been able to settle and feel safe. I grew up most of my life in a state of trauma and anxiety, especially in childhood and in my early 20s and in my mid and late 20s. And now I'm in my 30s. And for the first time in a long time, do I feel like I can just rest. And what happens when you feel like you can just rest? All that stuff you have not dealt with, and I'm talking to myself, all the things that I haven't dealt with because I've been operating in a state of survival are now coming up for me to face them. And today that looks like grief. I feel a lot of grief and sadness today. Grief of like who I expected myself to be at this age, but also like joy of what's to come.